that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Ben. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Well, hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock, a podcast dedicated to the history and evolution of cult and genre movies. I'm Gary Horne.
I'm Justin Bishop, and we are joined today by once again, our special guest, our comedian,
ever the third wheel,
and clinical cunt, Todd Davis.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Did we talk about last week when he stops becoming special? I think we did, but I don't know.
Todd is always special.
Oh, yeah.
Todd
Touched in the head.
I think by now people are sick of him. So.
He's probably sick of us. He's probably like, what did I get myself into? They're making me watch all these low budget horror movies that I don't give a shit about. And he's really rethinking some of his life choices.
I have enjoyed a number of them.
Like two of them. This is episode 8, and you've enjoyed 2 of them. You enjoyed Night Riders, and maybe 3. Night of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Night Riders.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something.
3 out of 7. I don't know this week, but at least 3 out of 7, which is still batting like 40%. So.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's interesting every time.
I don't know this week, but at least 3 out of 7, which is still batting like 40%. So.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's interesting every time. What the series has done for me with Romero is that every time I finish one of his movies now, I'm just like, man, Night Riders was good.
Yeah.
But we appreciate your perspective, though, Todd,
and I appreciate being here with you guys. No, I do enjoy. I like getting into movies that I might not have found otherwise. And I feel like that's kind of like, it's like trying new food, for those who have never tried sushi or whatever, it's just kind of like, hey, give this a try. You might like it.
Sushi's delicious.
Yeah. Sushi's great.
Except when you try new food, you still get the joy of having a great shit afterwards. And you don't get that with this. Well, it's just a lot of fun just releasing everything.
All right, so this week we are in week 8 of our George Romero, Tom Savini series. We're nearing the end of the series. There's only 2 more episodes after this one. This has been a long journey, but it's been fun. I mean, we've seen the ups and downs and all the different aspects of both of their careers, which I think has been pretty cool personally.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Well, for the most part.
Oh, no, actually, you've not enjoyed it for the most part. We just
for 40%. I think that's what we established. 40%.
Hey, if anything, it's helped my wife know who George Romero and Tom Savini are.
There you go.
Surely she had already seen like the Dead movies, though, right?
I don't know that she had actually seen them before, or like if she had, I don't know. Like obviously she seems like Night of the Living Dead or something, but I don't think she ever knew the trilogy really.
What did she think of them?
She thinks they're all right, but zombies are not really her thing anyway. Like,
what did she think? She's seen Creepshow in the past, though.
Yeah, she likes Creepshow. Okay, but
so that's the nice thing is I've been able to get Kat to watch just about everything with me. So, and I think she's enjoyed our time together.
All right, so Day of the Dead marked George Romero's final film as part of the Laurel Group. We've talked about his partnership with Richard Rubinstein in the past on the show, and that was the last movie that they did together, but it wasn't their final project together because the two of them continued to work together in some capacity over the next couple of years, but it was primarily in television. So their future work together after that included producing the Tales from the Dark Side TV series with Romero. Even he wrote the pilot episode called Trick or Treat, which was directed by actor Bob Balaban. Do you guys know who Bob Balaban is? He's part of like Christopher Guest's troupe of he wrote the pilot episode called Trick or Treat, which was directed by actor Bob Balaban. Do you guys know who Bob Balaban is? He's part of like Christopher Guest's troupe of actors, and he I had no idea
he's been a part of like Best in Show, and
he's in Best in Show, he's in but he's also done some work with like Wes Anderson. He is, I did not know he was a director, and I actually found out that he was a director prior to doing research for this episode, because I was looking up some other movie and saw his name as the director, and I can't even remember what that movie was now. But he also did a movie, Gary, you may have seen it, called Parents, from like the late 80s, early 90s, a horror comedy called Parents.
Like way back, I do remember
I think John Goodman's in it, but I remember it being pretty good. But yeah, apparently he's a horror movie director, because the other movies that I'd seen that he directed are horror comedy. So the Tales from the Dark Side series was an anthology series. That episode received a pretty positive reaction. He kind of always had mixed feelings about giving over creative control, because he's like, this is something he put his work into, and he was used to being the guy who brought that to fruition.
Well, it's always, when you get into any sort of collaborative effort, it gets exponentially more difficult and a little bit more of a crapshoot the more people you bring in.
Yeah, of course, because you a lot of times don't have control over what the final product is going to look like.
Exactly.
But Romero continued to work on the show. He wrote a couple of additional episodes in season 2, but he eventually decided that television just wasn't for him, especially with the anemic per episode budget that Tales from the Dark Side had. It had like $100,000 per episode, which is a super low budget for a TV show, even back in the early to mid 80s. And then he ended up turning down the offer to work on Laurel's next series, another anthology series called Monsters. Although he did write a segment, an adaptation of another Stephen King story called Cat from Hell for the Tales from the Dark Side movie, which was directed by his longtime collaborator, John Harrison. That was also produced by Laurel. And after that, he scripted Creepshow 2, another Stephen King adaptation, a series of Stephen King adaptations, which was directed by another longtime collaborator of his that we've talked about, his cinematographer, Michael Gornick, who worked on, I think, 5 movies with him over the years. And it was around that time, the late 80s, that Romero and Richard Rubinstein parted ways. There was apparently no real animosity between them, but there were some creative differences. They kind of had a different idea of the direction that things should go, and ended up kind of amiably parting ways. So in the absence of having his own production company to kind of play around with and do whatever he wanted, Romero went out looking for a job. He needed to work. And his next film would essentially be just that, just a job to kind of play around with and do whatever he wanted. Romero went out looking for a job. He needed to work. And his next film would essentially be just that, just a job. It was essentially a director for hire gig for Orion Pictures, who was, a fairly well-established studio in the 1980s. And that film, of course, is the film we're talking about today from 1988, Monkey Shines.
Once there was a man whose prison was a chair. The man had a monkey. They made the strangest pair.
What kind of experiment was it, Jeff? What did you do to Ella? What did you do to me?
The man was the prisoner. The monkey held the key.
You want to be the boss now, is that it?
Stop it!
No matter how he tried, the man couldn't flee. Locked in his prison, terrified and frail.
Jeff, she's here! She's down here!
The monkey gaining power, keeping him in jail.
Ella, no, don't do it!
The man tried to... The monkey ruled the man. It climbed inside his head. And now, as fate would have it, one of them is dead. Monkey Shines, an experiment in fear.
I've heard of that movie.
I hope so, because I hope you watched it. Monkey Shines, of course, tells the tale of a paraplegic man who's telepathically linked with a murderous monkey, which is a great tagline for a movie.
I thought this was funnier than Creepshow.
Yeah, like purposely? Or,
yeah, I thought it was.
Like on purpose? Monkey Shines is based on a novel of the same name by a British writer by the name of Michael Stewart, published in 1983. And just a year after its publication, United Artists optioned the rights for about $20,000. And that option also included the option for Stewart's follow-up novel. After 7 months of no movement on the project, UA's options on the books ran out. Far Cry never happened at all. But after the options ran out, producer Charles Evans kind of swooped in and snatched up the rights to Monkey Shines. So Evans,
any relation to
Robert Evans?
Robert Evans?
I don't think so.
Okay. What about Bob Evans?
Bob Evans, the restaurant?
Yeah.
The restaurateur?
Yeah. Is any relation?
Possibly.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Okay.
I cannot confirm.
I just, I would just want people to know where these
all the connections are important.
Where it intersects their life.
So Evans, along with fellow producers Peter Grunwald and Gerald S. Peonessa. Do you think I said that right?
Probably not.
Sounded close enough.
Probably not.
Better than I do.
They were fans of Romero's, and they showed him the novel, and they also showed him some preliminary script treatments. I'm not sure who those were written by. I could not find that information, but somebody had written up. They also showed him some preliminary script treatments. I'm not sure who those were written by. I could not find that information, but somebody had written up some treatments for it to try to convince Romero to work on the film. Of course, Romero himself he didn't use those treatments. He ended up writing the entire final shooting script from the bottom up himself. And this was Romero's first time working directly for a major studio. Like Creepshow, we talked about, was distributed by Warner Brothers, but it was independently produced and funded by United Film Distribution, who he had that 3-picture deal with. But this time he had to work directly for the studio suits from the beginning, which, as we know, Romero's an independent guy, doesn't like to work for the man. So, he was kind of forced to. He had to. If he wanted to get a movie made, he was at the point of his career where if I want to get a movie made, I've got to work for these guys. I've got to kind of compromise who I see myself as, that independent guy, that King Billy, from Knight Riders.
Right.
He had to kind of.
Okay. Am I going to stay, the poor starving artist, or, going to crank something out, on a bigger scale, which may afford other opportunities in the future, or do I stay to thine own self be true type thing?
So Monkey Shines also marked Romero's second most expensive movie ever, with about a $7 million budget, which is just slightly under the budget for Creepshow. And as with all of his other films, despite the fact that, he's working for a major studio, he insisted that, hey, we're still going to shoot this in and around Pittsburgh, just like I've done with all of my movies. And he was able to do that. So he shot in and around Pittsburgh. He even shot at his alma mater, Carnegie Mellon University, for some scenes. And it was a pretty tough shoot by all accounts. Production took place in the late summer, early fall of 1987. They shot for about 12 weeks. Christina Romero, his wife, Christine Forrest, who's in the film pretty prominently, commented that it was the toughest shoot we've ever had. And she said that they had shooting Forrest, who's in the film pretty prominently, commented that it was the toughest shoot we've ever had. And she said that they had shooting days that would last upwards of 12 hours. And then Romero would be in the editing suite. He'd work 6 days a week. And then day 7, he's in the editing suite with Pasquale Buba editing the film as well. So it was a tough shoot. And while, of course, shooting in Pittsburgh is kind of the norm for Romero, as we've discussed, one thing that really differs in this film, I think, is the people that he surrounded himself with. I'm not sure if it was a decision on his part or on the studios. I'm leaning toward it being the studios, but I can't confirm that. But Monkey Shines doesn't have like his typical crew, with the exception of Pasquale Buba, his editor. He doesn't have Michael Gornick, who'd done his last 5 movies with him. He doesn't have John Harrison doing the music or any second AD work. And honestly, I think that I would have preferred John Harrison to do the music because I like his minimalist kind of scores for his previous films better than the one that the composer here, a guy named David Shire, created for this. Because I think the music in this is pretty cheesy and pretty soap opera-y, I don't know. It's very, imagine this movie with one of those like synthesizer kind of scores that John Harrison had done for the last couple movies.
That would be a lot more fun, I think.
It would just change the whole vibe, I think.
Yeah, I agree. This movie was like a step away from like feeling like one of those TV movies in the 80s. Like,
very much so, yeah. All of which were based on the same kind of novels that this was based on, honestly.
Right.
I actually had the thought while I was watching it. I was like, God, you could see this on like Hallmark, the Hallmark channel, or
yeah. Well, I mean, in the '80s, they had all those like CBS
Lifetime,
movie of
even.
the weeks, and they had all those things and a lot of them were thrillers like this. So it definitely kind of fits in with that, and both in the.
But yeah, you're right. Cinematography's a big part of that as well.
Yeah, and of course, another complication that made this shoot pretty difficult was the fact that one of the main stars of the film was a monkey. So monkeys are,
not a real monkey, right? That was CG.
No, yeah, CG. It's all CG. It's very good CG. So the monkey in this, it's a capuchin monkey is the breed. It was played by 5 different monkeys on set. It says in the credits that it was played by Boo. Ella is played by Boo. But Boo, I think, is just one of the 5 monkeys. And I think probably the one that does the close-ups was probably
I was going to
her.
say, I think there was like one that they kept the close-ups on. I mean, people would know, like, it's clearly a different person.
Yeah.
When you said Ella was played by 5 monkeys, for some reason, I pictured all these monkeys in a little like Ella suit. Like they're sitting on top of each other's shoulder. Ella was played by 5 monkeys. For some reason, I pictured all these monkeys in a little like Ella suit. Like they're sitting on top of each other's shoulders in a trench coat.
It's a puppet. They're puppeteering outside.
The monkeys are the puppeteers. Yes.
My bad. I'm sorry.
It makes sense because they're the only ones that know what monkeys would really do.
and that, ladies and gentlemen, is real movie magic.
But this turned out to be kind of a nightmare for the crew because trained or not, monkeys tend to have a mind of their own and will often just do whatever the fuck they want to do. So as a result, there were times when getting a shot right would take like 4 hours. They'd have to do like 40 takes just to get the shot that Romero was going for. And the monkeys, they had handlers on set. Obviously, they had, they had professionals on set who were trained in monkey handling. And it's a weird term I never thought I'd use. Obviously, they had, they had professionals on set who were trained in monkey handling. And it's a weird term I never thought I'd use.
Can you imagine if we had done this episode back when Beavis and Butthead was still on the air? All the spanking the monkey jokes we would have made. It's just, oh man, a plethora of monkey
one
jokes.
thing that those monkeys lacked was not necessarily control of their bowels, but they didn't give a shit where they gave a shit.
Listen, we're not done with monkey handling jokes yet, Justin. Come on.
No, we've moved on to poop jokes, Todd.
Yeah, now not giving a shit where you take a shit. That's clever. I like that wordplay.
That's good.
And they would just shit anywhere at any time, including on the shoulders of the handlers, the women who were carrying them around. They just like take a shit. Who cares? So there's this monkey shit all over the set, having to be cleaned up all the time.
I saw some stuff with Romero where he talked about, like they wanted the affectionate scenes, which was like, of course, we need to bring in a regular love interest, please. Let's just really not let him go down. It's so odd.
That makes me think of The Man with Two Brains. Have you ever seen The Man with Two Brains?
I've been meaning to ask you about this scene.
Have you ever seen The Man with Two Brains with Steve Martin, the Carl Reiner movie?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fuck a gorilla.
But no, what I was gonna say is they the monkeys don't get very affectionate. They don't get close with you, though. Oddly enough, this kind of plays into what we were just talking about, unless they're in heat. So Romero was talking about they had to like wait for the handler, the trainers, to like call them and be like, all right, booze and heat, let's go. And so that they could film with because like she'd walk in and Jason Baggy, or is that his last name, Baggy? Is like the first person she sees. So she's like, let's go. And so that they could film with because like she'd walk in and Jason Baggy, or is that his last name, Baggy? Is like the first person she sees. So she's like, she's feeling very horny for Jason. And so she'll hug
in the
him,
scenes where she's hugging him, is she actually just
She's also very
humping
wet.
him. Is she also humping him?
The scenes where she's wet in the movie, she's wet in the movie. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my god!
Just kidding. This is inappropriate. But Jason Beggy does tell a great story too, by the way, about there's the scene where he was saying that the monkeys, somebody asked him about pranks, and he said, oh yeah, they love playing pranks. And so like Boo, there was a scene where she's feeding him grapes or tried to put a grape in his mouth, and
then she just take a shit in his mouth.
Well, she said he stands there and he's got to act it out with her, and she, he'll say like, Boo, grape. And one time she just like throws it in his face, and then I was like, "Boo, grape!" And then she'll just throw it off to the side. He's like, "Finally, she'd do it." So he's like, "Let me work with her for a little bit, see if I can get it down, and then I'll tell you when we're ready, and you can shoot it." So he said in there, "Boo, grape, boo, grape," and he says, "So I have to have like my mouth open and be ready for it." And he's like, "But then he's like, the time we're like ready for it," and I'm like, "Boo, grape." He's like, "I have my mouth open wide." As she quickly flings the grape aside, reaches back, grabs a shit, and shoves it in his mouth.
I was just joking. She really did.
That 100% happened. And they said that like everybody was like, "Did we get it?" And then he just smiles, and he has like very green teeth.
Oh.
He's like, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Oh, gross.
I kept trying to get Kat to feed me that way the other day, and it didn't go
Her
well.
poop?
What, the grapes or the poop?
Listen, I'm just
Which
saying.
way?
I don't think so.
Oh, gross.
I kept trying to get Kat to feed me that way the other day, and it didn't go
Her
well.
poop?
What, the grapes or the poop?
Listen, I'm just
Which
saying,
way?
at a certain point in your marriage, you want to spice it up a little bit.
I think that's too much spice. I'll be
sorry,
honest.
guys.
You know
what?
enough, Todd is also married to a
thing.
capuchin monkey, also, just so everybody knows. That's why all of these jokes, it's really not harmful that I'm making jokes about sexual things with monkeys, because it makes it's
But you were going to say sexual things with my wife.
No. Well, sort of. I'm saying that it's making it inclusive for you and your wife, is what I'm saying. We're an inclusive podcast.
We want everyone to feel like they belong here.
There's something here for everybody.
So, of course, there were some shots in the film that even the most well-behaved monkey would not be able to pull off. So for those, Romero enlisted his old friend Tom Savini. And Savini created basically monkey, one of which was remote controlled. They nicknamed it Robo Chimp. And each one, they were covered in like yak fur to make them look, realistic. And Romero claimed that the Robo Chimp, this is a quote from Romero, saved his ass, since the real monkeys wouldn't cooperate sometimes and do what he wanted them to do.
The Robo Monkey did not help the other monkeys cooperate either, because they're just like, "Is this what you think of us, George?
They took
Is this what we act like to you?"
And Savini, in addition to those,
really, George?
In addition to the puppets, he made these like fake monkeys that he'd hook onto strings. This is a very like lo-fi effect, which is I kind of love. So he would hook them to strings on a stick, like a fishing pole, and then he would place one and then pull it out of frame really quick to make it look like it had like run or jump quickly out of frame, which, is only on screen for a split second, but so it works, And Savini nicknamed the fake monkeys Mo, Larry, and Curly, so that he could just go like, "Hey, get me Mo for this shot," or "Hey, get me Curly, Larry, and Curly," so that he could just go like, "Hey, get me Mo for this shot," or "Hey, get me Curly for this shot," which I kind of love. Why was there no Shemp?
I was going to say, God, if they'd only had a Shemp in there.
Maybe that was the Robo Chimp.
Better question. Why
Shemp
was there
the Robo
ever a
Chimp?
Shemp?
Because didn't Curly die or something? Why isn't that why Shemp came around?
We'll do a Three Stooges series one day.
Oh, thank God.
So are we going to do the movie?
We should.
With that guy from Silicon Valley as Mo?
God, is that right? I didn't realize that. I've never seen the movie, but I know the guy from Mad TV is
the guy who plays Mo is the guy from Silicon Valley that goes, "This guy fucks."
That's awesome.
Yes, that same guy. He's great. For one scene, Savini even had to create an oversized monkey arm with an oversized razor in its hand, because they could obviously they're not going to give a razor to a real monkey. That would be
not after last time.
There are some scenes where you can tell that it's like a fake monkey arm, like when it's like lighting the. There are some scenes where you can tell that it's like a fake monkey arm, like when it's like lighting the matches towards the end. It's very clearly like a fake monkey hand.
I was going to say, I figured anytime it showed an up close of monkey hands doing anything, it's not real. Like the monkeys aren't posing for the camera. Like
Right,
hand
exactly.
models.
Exactly. The razor hand scene actually mirrors a scene from Romero's friend Dario Argento's film Phenomena that came out a couple of years earlier, 1985, I think it was. Have you ever seen Phenomena with Jennifer Connelly?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
I don't know why I said yes twice, but I have.
So, and for the finale, after, when
it's better than Deep Red.
Oh, Jesus, scary.
I'm just saying.
We're not getting into this. We don't have time to get into this right now. For the finale, where Alan is fighting the monkey and biting him and biting Ella, they needed a dead monkey to be thrown on the floor, right? They needed a dead monkey to flop on the floor after he, bites him and kills him. A company called Carolina Biological, and then he gives the cat to the prop people to use it in the scene. And I'll be honest, once you know that and you see that scene, it is clearly a dead cat and not a monkey. It is very clearly a dead cat. It also grossed Tom Savini out. I love this little tidbit about Tom Savini because we talked about this a little bit on Creep Show, right? How the roaches grossed him out. Like Tom Savini is kind of squeamish when it comes to stuff like that. For a guy who creates such like gruesome fake effects, like dead cats and roaches, things like that gross him out, as they would gross out most people. Yeah. But you kind of think of him as being desensitized to that stuff, but no, not necessarily.
Yeah, apparently you can watch humans get fucked up all day, but Tom Savini's a serial killer, is what we're trying to say.
No, dude, I watched Smoke and Mirrors a couple days ago, the Tom Savini documentary that's on Shudder, and he just seems like the best dude, honestly. Like he seems like a couple days ago, the Tom Savini documentary that's on Shudder, and he just seems like the best dude, honestly. Like he seems like the nicest dude, the most chill, like humble guy, and like he basically gave up his career to take care of his daughter because his daughter's mother was unfit to be a mother, so he took full custody and basically stayed in Pittsburgh when he got the offer to move to LA with Greg Nicotero and start a company with Greg Nicotero. He decided to stay in Pittsburgh for his daughter's shape and sort of ended his overall career as a makeup guy as a result.
Wow.
This explains that thing I think I mentioned on one episode where George starts working with Nicotero or something later
Land
on.
of the Dead, yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, he's like, I would have still worked with Savini, but they wanted someone with assets that they could sue
Savini
for
at the time didn't really, I mean, he's got a school now, which does well. And he does consulting work now, but he even talks in that documentary about, and he actually says that in the interview in that documentary, this is kind of getting off subject, but in that interview, he says that the reason he stopped really doing effects work almost completely is because his hands are like, he's got like arthritis and stuff and he can't use his hands properly to be able to like sculpt the stuff like he used to. So he does a lot of consulting and stuff like that still. And he has his school and teaches, but he doesn't do any like hands-on work. He hasn't done a movie in years, like, as an effects guy. Now he still acts a lot.
Yeah.
But as an effects guy, he hasn't done it. And it's because he reveals in that documentary that it's because his hands are not working properly anymore.
That's too bad.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer. But man, he just seems like the nicest dude. And I highly recommend Smoke and Mirrors, the Tom Savini story. If you have Shudder, it's on there. It is,
I think I've like scrolled past it and thought, like I
do Nicotero and all these people who have worked with him over the years. They interview his daughter a lot. Like he just seems like a good dude, and it makes me happy that we're doing this series because I'm like I would be friends with Tom Savini.
Yeah.
So
getting a lot of love online too from the George Romero Foundation too.
Yes,
I've seen that from that. So those seem like some good people. By the way, if you're
they're
not following the George Romero Foundation, you should.
Yeah, I think it's Garf Official. I think the Garf Official on Twitter. Anyway, we're following them. Just look at we've retweeted quite a lot of their stuff. So they're doing good work up in Pittsburgh, carrying on the legacy of Mr. Romero up there and teaching folks up in Pittsburgh, young kids how to make movies.
I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring up just because of I think we picked two great guys to start off this series with.
We did, yeah. Yeah, they both have done great work and have great legacies. So once again on this movie, we mentioned Greg Nicotero just now, but he was Savini's assistant again on this.
To start off this series with.
We did, yeah. Yeah, they both have done great work and have great legacies. So once again on this movie, we mentioned Greg Nicotero just now, but he was Savini's assistant again on this. And Gary mentioned this, I think, back in our Day of the Dead episode, that Greg Nicotero had wanted to be a doctor. He was going to medical school. And it was around the time of this movie, or in between the two movies, I guess, that Nicotero basically decided to leave the medical field, leave the medical school completely to work full-time with Savini. And he's a millionaire now. So, that worked out well for him. He's doing fine. And he actually has a small cameo in this film as a doctor, kind of in honor of the life that he left behind. They give him a small cameo in the movie. So the film's distributor, or Orion Pictures, you guys know Orion. They're actually back now, which is kind of cool. You're seeing their logo again, because that logo brings back so many like nostalgic memories.
Oh yeah, same.
Eventually include this one, but they really wanted a hit with this movie, and they forced Romero to add a happy ending to the film. Something that, of course, as we've seen, Romero had long avoided in lieu of something more nihilistic, or at least more ambiguous in his endings on previous films.
Yeah, this is the one where I think I mentioned it back on another episode, but I don't remember. I don't think he named a name or anything on who specifically it was, but that he was fighting, we talked famously last week about like him saying no, or, that kind of thing, being one of his legacies, that he would be willing to say no to things. But in this one, that they were like, yeah, okay, you can keep your ending, but if you do it, this movie will open in flight somewhere. That's how we'll do this.
And so he was obviously not very happy with that. He didn't have a great experience on this film. The ending that he had originally intended was going to conclude the film the same way that the novel concludes, which is that Alan does not recover from his accident. He doesn't get that surgery at the end that fixes him, basically.
Yeah.
And then to add insult to injury, after some poor preview screenings, the studio recut the film without Romero's knowledge, and then they added a kind of shock ending at the end. Which I am assuming that refers to the monkey,
alien chest burster,
monkey at the end. Which, to be fair, is a very fun effect, even though it doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the film. It's a fun visual, I think.
Right.
Because it is exactly what I thought was alien chest burster monkey.
To be honest, when the movie didn't cut to black right there and roll credits, I was a little disappointed.
I wish it had, right? I wish that would have been.
Leave it.
If you're going to throw that ending in there, I mean, it's very much like Carrie and these things. Friday the 13th, like movies with these dream endings for a shock, but it would have been. It's a fine enough ending, and a little more ambiguous,
I want to tread carefully here when I talk about that, because I don't want to sound, or I don't want to be insulting. I don't think I am, but like, for the ending of this movie, what I was thinking as I was watching that is like, they're literally pushing a guy in a wheelchair behind him, and then this guy gets up to walk, and I'm like, this is kind of bullshit. I'm like, not everybody gets this ending, and not everybody gets to walk again. I was like, this feels like it's kind of insulting. And I'm like, and then they're pushing this poor dude behind him in a wheelchair, across the screen for no other reason. I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, this guy's not going to walk anymore. But this guy got
this other guy's fucked, but our hero is going to be fine.
Yeah. And I'm like, what did he do?
Girlfriend, he's got a,
And it's like, I even looked at I was thinking, like, what's the nurse's plan?
The original ending that Romero had in mind played into the scene of the animal rights activists who we see spray painting the building where Jeffrey works, and he kind of runs them off. Because in the final film, that scene never is recalled again. Like, it never really amounts to anything at all in the film.
Yeah.
But so there was an issue of Premiere magazine that was published just before the film came out. They kind of described the original ending, which it said that there was a group of protesters gathered outside of the lab, and then a scientist, which the way they describe it, they don't say, but I am assuming it's Stephen Root's character, gets hit with a rock, and then he threatens to unleash, this is a quote, a whole platoon of killer monkeys that had been developed inside the lab as a result of Jeffrey's experiment. So the idea is that maybe he's been injecting all of these monkeys with the brain matter or whatever it was, and now they're all like super intelligent monkeys. It's based as a result of Jeffrey's experiment. So the idea is that maybe he's been injecting all of these monkeys with the brain matter or whatever it was, and now they're all like super intelligent monkeys. It's basically Rise of the Planet of the Apes at this point. Is the end of the movie is what's happening.
That'd be cool.
I think incredible.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like a great ending and opens you up to,
crossovers.
The War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Is the next film. Yeah. Basically, whatever Romero's version of that was going to be.
Maybe that is what he was going for. That's kind of crazy when you say that, like, because that is the perfect original, like the prequel to Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Like that's the perfect lead in.
Yeah. Instead of Jason Begay, it's James Franco.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of the similar story. It's so weird.
Yeah,
so the film was released.
I'd like to see Franco in a wheelchair.
Oh, that's rude.
Sorry.
Wow. Got dark real fast.
I mean,
sorry.
Franco's had some, things accused. He's been accused of some things, but yeah, I'm not going to wish crippling on.
No, sorry.
On
I just, it's the pain meds, guys. I'm sorry.
Todd's on pain meds today. You
wish him dead or not at all, Todd.
Yeah. You better watch out, Todd. That karma's going to come back on you. Todd's got a broken. Todd sprained his butt. I'm just going to throw this out there. Todd sprained his butt this week. And,
yeah, sorry.
So you better be quiet, or
you're I know.
Wheelchair, and you don't have an Ella to take care of you.
I know.
I mean, you got a wife, but she's not going to feed you.
She's not going to throw poop at me like I want.
And there's a 90% chance that you'll meet James Franco and he'll just like F you right in the mouth.
So on Cinema Shock.
Putting the shock in Cinema Shock. So this film was released on July 29th, 1988. It was released because it's a term for like monkey business, like shenanigans.
Yeah.
So I can
but shenanigans doesn't work as well as a title.
Monkey Shenanigans I would watch that movie.
No, just Shenanigans should have been the
Shenanigans. And I'm sure there's already a movie called Monkey Business. I know there's a movie called Monkey Trouble because I've seen it and it's delightful. But I guess it's kind of a goofy title, so I guess the producers wanted to make sure people knew this was supposed to be like a horror movie, or a thriller at least.
Yeah,
there were a few other titles that were considered before they landed on that. Those were Ella.
Yeah,
I actually kind of like that better.
Yeah, I think that's a better name. The Primate was one of them, which is kind of bland, and Monkey See, Monkey Do was one of the titles that were batted around.
It's also accurate.
Yeah.
Not less goofy than Monkey Shines.
That's true.
So Monkey See titles that were batted around.
It's also accurate.
Yeah.
Not less goofy than Monkey Shines.
That's true.
So Monkey See, Monkey Do.
Yeah, that's more
that's
like
the sequel. That's definitely the sequel.
Oh man.
Because now I can picture the executive trying to pitch them on the title. No. It's a good idea. Listen.
Yeah. Listen, you weren't on set for the first The movie, when it was released, was met with mixed reviews. It was also met with a pretty tepid response from audiences. It made like $5.3 million at the box office during its run. And this is over the course of this is the late 80s. Things weren't out in the movies they weren't out in theaters for a couple of weeks. This was like 20 weeks that it was out in theaters, made $5 million on a $7 million budget.
Wow.
The film was also met with criticism from some disability rights organizations. It was out in theaters, made $5 million on a $7 million budget.
Wow.
The film was also met with criticism from some disability rights organizations because of some of the early promotional material that showed a toy monkey in a wheelchair. Also, the original trailer, I think, referred to the wheelchair as like a prison, so they were like, this is not cool, man. Like, so on the Saturday of the weekend that the film opened, members of one of the groups formed a picket line with wheelchairs at the Hollywood Pacific Theater. So there's just a bunch of wheelchairs lined up in front of the theater. And one of the members of that group, the group was called ADAPT, which stands for American Disabled for Attendant Programs Today, because they actually worked with like helper animals, helper monkeys. And they were quoted, one of those members was quoted by a newspaper as saying, the idea of a monkey attendant turning into a monster is appalling. Like they were not happy about the basic premise. Orion Pictures would eventually issue a public apology, and they promised to consult disability experts for promotional materials of upcoming projects, which makes it sound like they had a whole string of projects coming up that involved like people in wheelchairs.
We got all these people in wheelchair movies lined up. What are we
all
going to
these,
do?
we bought all these wheelchairs.
Damn it.
So, I don't know what that's just the dumbest
Some executive. Oh, so now I got to hire a special guy. All right.
I wonder if any of these people had ever seen the movie, though, because maybe they went, because he was pretty capable. I mean, although this was before the theater was probably handicap accessible. So it just... was that too much? I don't know. We're going to get tweets. We'll find out.
We're going to get some tweets.
I'm just saying that, they never mind. I'm just
going we know what you're saying. We get the joke. So I don't think that it's, I'll get y'all's opinion on it. It sounds like we all land kind of in the same boat on this one, but I don't think it's blasphemous necessarily to call Monkey Shines one of Romero's like lesser works. Yeah, I think it mostly lacks the socio-political underpinnings of his other work that we've discussed in the series. There's some of that. I mean, there's a little bit of that because you could say that
I was trying to find it.
I mean, you could say that he's making some statements about medicine, big pharma, that kind of stuff. Oh, and especially you could probably say something about animal rights and animal experimentation. But it kind of gets lost. I mean, it's really not as defined as in some of his other work.
Well, even in that case, I don't know that that's near and dear to George Romero's heart in terms of issues to discuss through his films.
Right, right.
It comes off half-hearted at best.
Well, and what drives me nuts too is that, again, with the ending, is that it takes away, back to,
right.
It comes off half-hearted at best.
Well, and what drives me nuts too is that, again, with the ending, is that it takes away. Back to I probably badly joked around about this, but the idea that this guy gets up and walks at the end, I feel like is still insulting. Like right. And especially when he proves that this guy survives this whole ordeal as a quadriplegic. Like he's still capable.
Fully capable.
And
he murdered a monkey.
Well,
with his mouth.
That is the most important thing that he did in this movie, sure. But I'm just saying he also was learning to survive.
Well,
and this also features a sex scene, by the way. He
also gave a woman oral pleasure.
Well, yeah. So I'm saying that throughout the movie, it shows that even as a quadriplegic, this guy is capable of lots of things. Like he's fine. Not, you know what I mean? I'm just saying.
So he really handled her monkey.
And then he was able to work with that, is what I'm saying.
And you're saying he's handy capable.
He proved to be handy capable. Yes.
We're gonna get in trouble for this episode.
I feel like we are, and I don't. I was trying to stick to the point that the guy was very capable as a human being, and still a very valid human being. He was learning
he didn't have to be
deal with his disability.
Well, he didn't have to be quote unquote fixed to live. He proved that he could live his life as he was.
And this woman fell in love with him as was, and all of this stuff. It was nothing. This was just a part of his life, and so I feel like that ending
it's
tears
kind of a
that
fuck
all
you.
away.
Yeah,
so,
I agree with that
ending.
I hate it too. I agree, and there's stuff to like. There's stuff to like about the movie. I think. It's not a bad movie. It's just when you compare it to some of Romero's other works, it's a middle of the road movie. It's entertaining enough. For the most part, it does kind of touch on something that even Romero's zombie films kind of touch on, which is kind of our internal instincts as humans. I'm thinking of Dawn of the Dead, which is talking about our capitalistic tendencies. People are automatically drawn to this shopping center. But in this one, it's sort of commenting on something even more internal than that, which is our animal impulses, our id, for the lack of a better term, because that's basically what Ella represents in the movie. I mean, because we see as they develop this this telepathic connection, that she is sort of, Alan's like an angry person. Alan's an angry man. He's angry at the cards that life has dealt him. The connection that she is sort of, Alan's like an angry person. Alan's an angry man. He's angry at the cards that life has dealt him. And Ella is sort of Alan's, that rage externalized, these feelings that he might suppress otherwise, like she's acting them out because she's connected to his mind and his feelings.
Yeah, I know that in some stuff I read from Romero that he was really focused in on, he even said that he didn't feel like the book went into this enough, the Jekyll and Hyde aspect of his personality. And
which is interesting considering one of Romero's later movies is going to be, which we're not going to talk about on this show, on this series at least, but The Dark Half is very much a Jekyll and Hyde story.
Sure. Yeah. So you definitely see some parallels there. And, but that's one of the important aspects he wanted to get over. And, it's, I feel like Romero is just, I mean, we already know this from everything we talked about, but well, like, for example, right here, I over-explain things. I try to go around the everything to get to my point. I feel like Gary. Romero has that same thing. I feel like Romero has a lot of things he wants to get out, and he has trouble editing it down. And then the studio got a hold of this movie, and they chopped it up too much.
Right.
And so none of his stuff made sense. But if you take things like, for instance, like the protesters or like his mother storyline, and that subplot, like those kind of things, on one hand, they don't even need to be there necessarily. The reason they're there, I think, is to give you some insight into why Romero's very focused on the characters more so than any of the horror ever. That just always seems like his thing. So he really wants to explain to you why Alan is this way and like why Alan would have so much rage. Look at all the things like his thing. So he really wants to explain to you why Alan is this way and like why Alan would have so much rage. Look at all the things going on in his life right now that are causing him to go crazy a little bit sometimes. And so he's trying to play all of this out in this movie that is going to be a hot, like, you've got an hour and a half to do this. That's all you're going to get. And we're going to chop it up until
the thing is that he used 2 hours to get to it, not an hour and a half. And I think, so Roger Ebert in his review, who he did not like the movie, he gave it, I think, 2.5 stars. He said, there's a quote from Roger Ebert's review: "Somewhere within this movie's 2 hours or so is hidden an absolutely spellbinding 90-minute thriller." And I think that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I think because the movie, it does take a while to get going. I mean, but you could, if it were a little more tightly edited, sized, or really trimmed down, I think you could really, I don't know. I think it could. I think it would work better. I think that this is the kind of movie that needs to be 90 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the problem is that like they wanted to keep the mother storyline because there's a body. Like
sure, and he got Joyce Van Patten in the role, so he wanted. This is part of Romero's. Like we talked about on especially Creep Show, how he likes to. He's casting old Hollywood types, like he's doing that again with Joyce Van Patten, and she's really good in it. She's very good in it. So he probably had a hard time cutting some of her stuff, even though there's enough early on to like get the point across. You don't need all of it to get the point across that she's this sort of overbearing mother type who just needs to take care of him, and he doesn't necessarily, he's fairly independent, doesn't necessarily need someone.
She's the easy, obviously a person focused on your physical fitness, like which they established right at the beginning
with that butt.
Yeah, he has like literally
naked.
Yeah, he has my exact same morning routine, and
I thought that was footage of you actually.
Yeah, exactly, because my ass looks like that. You establish that he's very concerned with himself physically, and then it's all taken away from him immediately. That's already like that's base enough for like your
for a
him
reason
being
why
frustrated.
Yeah. And then his girlfriend leaves him for Stanley Tucci.
Yeah.
And you've got,
so like all of this stuff is like extra layers on this cake, and it's like
you get all the stuff with the bird, like with Christine Forrest.
Sure, the bird is like another like little piece that's like take it or leave it. Like it's there to show like the first glimpse of the monkey will fucking murder something.
Right.
Yeah. It's there to show like the first glimpse of the monkey will fucking murder something.
Right. Yeah. Which I get, but I feel like some of that could have been trimmed down. I feel like you could have taken a half an hour out of this movie. And I'm never one to really complain about movies being long, and 2 hours is not long for a movie, but for this story, I think it's a little much. Personally, I think it's unnecessary. I think this is the kind of movie that needs to be like Ebert said, like a slick, trim, lean 90 minutes.
Right.
But it is undoubtedly one of Romero's most well-crafted films in terms of like quality. It's got slick production design. It doesn't look at all like the kind of scrappy independent stuff that he'd done before, with the exception probably of Creepshow. But it doesn't matter how good it looks on the surface if the meat of the story doesn't quite work out, and it is always really fun. That's always and watching trained monkeys is always kind of fascinating. But there's just something missing about this movie that makes it feel something that's essential to what makes a Romero film is missing from this movie to me.
I feel like a big part of it is when you talk about a Romero movie, at least for me from now on, I think of a Romero movie is actually like this circle of friends, like this
hanging out, making movies. Yeah.
Hanging out,
this doesn't,
movies,
even though this was
fun.
made in Pittsburgh, it doesn't feel like that regional style filmmaking that his other movies do.
Exactly. And so now a big studio's involved. Now something feels a little, I don't know, maybe for them it wasn't this way, but it feels like there was a little something extra added in that just made everybody a little bit more uncomfortable, or a little, things were different now.
Right.
And it just didn't feel exactly the same. Meddling definitely has an impact though.
Sure. And it does have, kind of shades of something like Martin, which is like a character study, but with genre elements,
Right.
Yeah.
Or even like Night Riders, where Night Riders, as we discussed, was a very personal film for Romero, and like kind of his mission statement in making film. And he does do some stuff here that I find very interesting, that I feel like has that personal touch. So there was an article that I read on Birth Movies Death that Brian Collins wrote, and he said that here's a guy, this is a quote from Brian, here's a guy who found himself boxed in, unable to operate the way he was used to. So he's talking about, of course, Alan, but he could also very well be talking about Romero. Yeah. Here's a guy who we know that he's compromised before. He compromised on Day of the Dead because he was either going to have to release a film that was compromised by its rating and get that R rating, but get the budget he wanted, or get something closer to what, get all the gore and the things that he wants to put in the film, but compromise on by having a lower budget. And then, even with Monkey Shines, he found himself in a situation where he couldn't really comfortably work within the studio system, which is, again, something that he'd always fought, but he could no longer secure the budgets that he needed to execute his ideas in the world of indie filmmaking. So he was kind of between a rock and a hard place. So you can see this being a very personal take on that, like where he's almost putting himself in Alan's spot. Alan was this guy who was a championship runner who is now in a position where he can no longer do what he loves to do and has to kind of figure out how to exist. So you can definitely feel that in this. It's just that as a whole, it doesn't quite coalesce.
Yeah, absolutely. I found myself, like, I guess 2/3 of the way through the movie just going, I'm not sure I take any of this seriously. Like this, it was right. Just, it was really hard. It was really hard
on it to get to the monkey business.
Right.
Honestly. I keep waiting on that monkey to fuck some people up. And
yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, like, could they have chosen a more adorable killer?
I mean, Ella's super cute throughout. Her Boo is super cute in her role as Ella, and this is her first and last movie that I know of. And it's too bad.
She's on IMDb and she only has one entry.
Right.
She is on IMDb.
That's awesome.
I was looking at IMDb and I saw her listed. I was like, oh, does she have an entire
had an issue? All I can find is the one with it sitting in a wheelchair. The wheelchair is never the part that I remember. I just remember the wide eyes and it's slinging those.
It's great marketing, honestly.
Yeah, it was a creepy looking image, and I remember as a kid seeing that come on the television and being creeped out by that. I totally remember that.
Yeah,
hating that commercial. And I tried looking it up on YouTube because I felt like there was one that was just silent with that thing going. And that's how I have it in my memory. And I couldn't find exactly that, but it's just that thing is, it's not even in the movie at all.
Not at all.
Too bad.
And Romero, he tried even after this for years to make movies within the studio system, including another one with Orion, which was The Dark Half, came out in 1993. Based again on a Stephen King novel. The Dark Half was barely released. So, I mean, so we talk about Orion being in kind of dire financial straits with this movie. By time Dark Half came out, like they were really struggling, and Dark Half sat on the shelf for like 2 years, I think, before it got released. So they barely like promoted it, and it just kind of disappeared. It's a fine movie. It's okay. It's not bad. It's not up to par with some of Romero's earlier work, but it's worth checking out. It's got a really good performance by Timothy Hutton in the lead role. If for those not familiar with Timothy Hutton, if you've seen the Haunting of Hill House, then you've seen him. But spending the time working on those studio gigs also cost Romero other gigs. In the 1990s, he spent years developing a movie that never even happened, but because he was developing it for so long, it cost him the job of doing The Mummy. He was supposed to do the Mummy remake, the one with not necessarily the version with Brendan Fraser, but when Universal, that never even happened. But because he was developing it for so long, it cost him the job of doing The Mummy. He was supposed to do the Mummy remake, the one with not necessarily the version with Brendan Fraser, but when Universal was developing. When they had the idea to do a new Mummy movie, Romero's the guy that they wanted to do it initially, and it wasn't going to be like the action adventure that it became, but he was the original guy working on that. He was also supposed to direct Pet Sematary.
Oh, wow.
But post-production issues on this movie, on Monkey Shines, caused him to have to bow out of that one, so he ended up not doing Pet Sematary.
Yeah, that would have been cool. That would have been, either of those would have been, I'd like to see those.
One of the cool things with Romero is, besides his friends, though, it's worth mentioning. We kind of touched on it, but he's good at casting, or at least his wife is, or whatever. I don't know. Like I didn't see if she did the casting in this.
I don't think she did it on the
casting in this.
I don't think she did it on this one. But I'm not 100% sure, so don't.
All of these people are like new. I mean, a lot of names you'll recognize, but I mean, I think Stephen Root was like nobody before that. He had like a Crocodile Dundee 2 like cameo kind of thing.
Stanley Tucci had not done much prior to this.
He had been in like a few things. They'd all done like small like bit roles, or either like TV show, like one episode in a show like Miami Vice or something, like they'd all been.
And Jason Begay, like he is not someone that I'm necessarily familiar with, although if you look at his IMDb, he's been in quite a lot of stuff since this. Almost always playing a cop. Always playing a cop. He just has that look to him,
He's got the look and the voice,
and he's fine in this. I mean, he's okay in this. I think he's not bad, but I do love his delivery when he's threatening Boo. He's like, "I'm going to rip your fucking heart out," or like that scene. I think
are very sharp,
very sharp.
Like that prosthetic. I thought it might be prosthetic.
Like, it looks a lot like the monkey.
I was about to say, I thought that was prosthetic, like they were trying to show he was like sort of
becoming a beast,
or something.
Animal. I don't know, but I don't know. I didn't see anything about that being prosthetic, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I honestly can't say. Yeah, I guess the only one in this who is was already well established at the time was Joyce Van Patten.
Oh, I thought it was the monkey. Sorry.
No, the monkey was very young.
And last role for the monkey.
No.
Kate McNeil. She was in the House on Sorority Row.
Yeah, which was prior to this, I believe, right?
Yeah. I think that's before this. So
she's also in Sudden Death. After this.
Oh yeah, she is.
She's the girl in Sudden Death.
but I think the biggest ones to come out of this are probably. Beggy is in like. I haven't seen it, but Chicago Fire. And
he's
movies.
a big TV.
Yeah, she is.
She's the girl in Sudden Death.
but I think the biggest ones to come out of this are probably. Beggy is in like. I haven't seen it, but Chicago Fire. And
he's
movies.
a big TV guy now. I mean, he's had a pretty successful career in television. Again, playing like cops or.
But Stanley Tucci and Stephen Root are by far they're both like character actors that have like 100 roles at least. And so, he made me think of Upgrade in this movie. I was trying to think of like the person who's having to act with only like the neck up, it was just interesting. And I guess in that sense, like even the idea that, for him, it's a monkey, but like your other part of you is doing something that you can't control, interesting. I'm sure it's not those Upgrades, not the only other movie like that, but it's immediately what I thought of for some reason.
So after this, Romero is actually a movie that fell in between Monkey Shines and The Dark Half. And it was a movie that was not made at all with Hollywood studios because it was an Italian production that was barely released in the US when it came out. And I honestly don't know. I haven't researched, the behind the scenes on this yet, but I have a feeling there's probably not a lot of information out there about the making of this movie, but we're going to find out, next week how much information we can find, because this is kind of a very little seen movie within Romero's filmography. It's a movie from 1990 called Two Evil Eyes. And it was actually an anthology film, but not like Creepshow where it's, 5 different stories. It's 2 different stories, one of which is directed by Romero and one of which is directed by Dario Argento. So it's going to be an interesting, almost outlier in this series, but Romero and Savini did collaborate on Romero's half of the film. So and so it's gonna be a fun one to talk about because I've actually never seen Two Evil Eyes.
I've never seen it either. Thinking of Deep Red though, and a lot of what I've said about Romero, I could totally see why him and Argento are best buds.
Yeah, I love Argento. I love Argento, and I'm excited to watch it. It's just one that's always eluded me for some reason, and I don't know why. But I'm gonna watch it this week, so we'll see how it holds up.
Is this the last one in the Romero Savini?
No, we're going to be doing the Night of the Living Dead remake.
Oh, that's right.
After that, which Romero, of course, didn't really have anything to do with creatively, but he was an executive producer. And that feels like a good end, cap since we started with the original Night of the Living Dead. So,
on. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, then we'll be done. Well, then we'll be moving on to something else.
It's worth mentioning, by the way, I just want to establish that if I was offensive to our handicapped brothers and sisters, I apologize. I was not trying to be.
Vaughn.
Jesus, Todd.
Gary tries to suppress his edgelord tendencies most of the time.
Just trying to
sometimes he just can't help it.
I'm just trying to balance the equation here.
If there's a joke, sometimes I can't stop it, and it just comes out. But seriously, I'm trying to also focus on the fact that this movie makes a very capable person. The ending. Shut up, Todd. No, Todd, I don't know. I just feel like Todd's going to make some comment. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I also wanted to say that one of the funny quotes I saw from Romero about this movie is I saw him at the TIFF festival. They were talking to him about Monkey Shines, and they were like, yet again, you didn't compromise. Like you showed a sex scene with maybe the first time or with a quadriplegic in a sex scene, and so no compromise with a quadriplegic in a sex scene, and so no compromise from George Romero. And he's like, I didn't go in for close-ups, I compromised. I really like that out of him.
That's great. I love him. He's amazing. What an amazing character he is.
Yeah, it just seems like a really good dude. Just all in all,
he really does. So we're going to be talking about Two Evil Eyes next week. You can find out where to stream that by visiting cinemashock.net. Just click on any of the recent episodes and you'll see a link to where you can stream all of our kind of upcoming episodes. So I've been doing that on all of our entries. So like if you go on the entry to this episode, for instance, on our website, you'll see a link to where you can stream Two Evil Eyes and where you can stream Night of the Living Dead 1990. So you can do your kind of your homework coming up, because we do want our listeners to watch these movies along with us, because that's kind of, obviously we're talking very heavily in spoiler week season right now. You should be watching a horror movie every day anyway, right? So, make at least a couple of those some Romero Savini movies.
Absolutely. And also visit monkeyhelpers.org, which is the home of Helping Hands. They're a nonprofit organization that helps adults with spinal cord injuries and other mobility impairments live more independent and engaged lives by providing you with your own murderous monkey.
Wow.
And probably not murderous.
Hopefully not murderous, but
they're teachable.
If you want them to be, they're trainable.
So either way, then.
All right. You guys have anything else to add about Monkey Shines before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. I think I've said enough.
It's a laugh. It's a laugh riot.
I do want to know real quick before we sign off, Todd, what are your, because we're nearing the end of this series.
Mm-hmm.
Next week will officially be the last Romero.
It's a laugh. It's a laugh riot.
I do want to know real quick before we sign off, Todd, what are your, because we're nearing the end of this series.
Mm-hmm.
Next week will officially be the last Romero directed one that we're going to do. What are your kind of thoughts on the Romero filmography so far? Like where do you rank them? Like what are your overall? Because me and Gary have seen probably more of these movies prior to the series than you have, I think.
Yeah, probably. You guys, while both of you had some religious upbringing, mine took it as far as to not show me a lot of really cool movies.
Oh, I saw them on my own.
Oh, okay. I have enjoyed the series so far. I think it's a testament. Maybe there's some young filmmakers out there listening, so realize that even some of the greats, Romero, Savini, not everything that they had was gold. That in compromising it, takes a lot of that passion out of the movie, and it comes through. It translates to the audience. It absolutely does. And they're fun, and I enjoy them. But if you go into it with like, okay, I'm a big zombie fan, so I'm only going to watch the zombie stuff, it's a horse that you can beat to death really quick. So you gotta, that's why people like to save this stuff for Halloween, for the month of October. It's when they actually sit down and watch those movies and revisit some of those movies. You don't want to do it all the time. Otherwise it'll lose its magic, its spark. But
I disagree on that point,
well, okay. Well, it's because they are worth talking about, especially the ones where, George Romero was, and whoever was holding the pen on these films, when they actually do try to convey stuff, I think it's important to look closer and analyze that, and even compare it to whatever's going on today. And I know we've mentioned that already more than once in the series, that some of the things that he was talking about are still very, very relevant, sadly relevant today.
Yeah.
And it's great. Okay, so maybe I'm not into everything, but I have enjoyed talking about these with you guys.
What's been your favorite and least favorite movies so far?
I think my most favorite, probably not surprising, I really enjoyed, because I look at them as two different genres. I think Dawn of the Dead's my favorite. Most favorite, probably not surprising, I really enjoyed, because I look at them as two different genres. I think Dawn of the Dead's my favorite horror thing, and Knight Riders is my favorite, I'll say, adventure character study thing. My least favorite in terms of the horror thing or character development, it's got to be Martin. It just didn't hit with me. You know how sometimes you watch a movie and you love it, but then there's sometimes where you watch a movie, you're not super into it, and just because of where you are, maybe it just doesn't hit with you, and then you revisit it later and be like, oh yeah, this is actually really good. So I'm waiting for the day when I revisit Martin and kind of really enjoy it.
There's a Blu-ray coming out next year, so
for what it's worth,
a Blu-ray coming. They're finally putting it out on Blu-ray special edition next year.
Okay, right.
So that will hopefully provide some cool behind the scenes stuff too.
That would be.
I think Night Riders has made. I haven't had a chance to do it, but Night Riders makes me want to watch Martin again because because I'm not kidding about Night Riders. Like I say it every episode now since we reviewed it, but like Night Riders is legitimately like it's. I love that movie. I think it is Romero's best film so far, even up until Monkey Shines, at least. It's still his best movie. And I think that there's something, I don't know, like it made me rethink Romero all the way around. And so I'm learning something on this series, even as a horror fan, that like Romero was more than a horror
more than a
guy.
Zombie guy.
Yeah, he was more than a zombie guy. He actually was a filmmaker, and it just so happened that he was very good at doing it in a horror way. Right. And so he just, that's where he was at, but he had more in the tank than just that. But anyway, but it's just interesting. It makes me want to go back and watch Martin. You were talking about Martin. I think I went into it with the wrong attitude, possibly, and I just need to rewatch it.
Now that you kind of see that what Romero can do with more character stuff. I get that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you guys again for listening. If you want to follow the show, we are at cinema_shock on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search for Cinema Shock. And I am at Justin_Bishop. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd. How about you, Mr. Horne?
I am at This Is Gary Horne everywhere.
And Todd?
And I'm at Mr. Todd A. Davis, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and D&D Beyond.
D&D Beyond. Todd's trying to make it happen, guys.
This is so
among
weird.
other things.
Ryan is trying to make it happen. Well, until next week.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
Johnny has the keys.
Oh, Todd.
I tried to like a Band-Aid, just real quick, get it in there.
Gary, you weren't quick enough in hitting the stop record button.
I know. I feel like I would have even accepted if he would have just been like, you medical.
Ella Keys. Bring Johnny the keys. Ella Keys.
All right, there you go.